So French food. When I had been to Paris before, all I ate were crepes and baguettes. And so I was okay with that being a daily thing on my mission. But then I quickly realized it's not that good for you to only eat bread and crepes. And also, they're not called crepes, they're called crepes. And so that was an adjustment for me to say. But in France, they have what is called a galette. It's more common in the west of France, in Bretagne. They have the Bretagne crepe, and it's just like a crepe, but it's made with a different kind of flour. And from what I know, it's healthier, so you can eat more of them. And it's really basic. In America, when we think of crepes, we think of ice cream, whipped cream, and cookies, and chocolate, and put everything on one crepe. But if you show that to a French person, I think they would die and just think that we're typical fat Americans. In France, their crepe is really basic. It's just the crepe itself, and you can put some sugar on it by itself, or some lemon juice, or some butter, and you just have it like that. And then the galette, which is my preferred crepe, you can just have an egg and some cheese and ham, and you fold it, and it's so good. Bread really is a huge deal in France. They have a baguette in their house at all times, I am pretty sure. And I remember my last area, we went to a member's house for dinner, which was really rare. We went and ate with them, and the mom and the dad, they were so distraught because they hadn't been able to go to the bakery that morning to get their bread. And so they were just apologizing to us forever, telling us how sorry they were that they didn't have bread to give us. Me and my companion were like, oh no, it's not a big deal. Like, it's fine. We're okay without eating bread. And the dad, he said, no, I didn't get to eat my breakfast this morning because I didn't have bread. And to me, I was like, oh, you don't need bread to eat breakfast. But bread really is a big deal. Also, pastries are really good in France. A million kinds of pastries. And you kind of will find bakeries and pastry shops on every corner. Kind of like in Provo, you see ring stores and stuff, or chapels. They're really common, and they'll be across the street from each other, and you'll have certain people that will go to one bakery to get their baguettes, and they'll go to another bakery to get their pastries or different kinds of things. They all have their different specialties. And then in different parts of France, I think they eat different things. In the east of France, where it's closer to Germany and the mountains and it's a little bit colder, they eat a lot more of a hearty meal, a lot more meat and heavier things, potatoes. Whereas when I served in the West, it was a little bit lighter. And then during Christmas time, I didn't know this, but where I was for Christmas, live oysters are a huge deal. And I'm glad they're not a huge deal here because I'm not a huge fan of them. But they just give you a live oyster that you can see still moving, and you just, if you want, you can put a little bit of vinegar on it, and you just slurp it in your mouth, and everyone loves that. A lot of caviar during Christmas, and just different things. French food really is good, but I'd say that from day to day they eat pretty basic. They don't always have these huge elaborate meals, but it's very common for there to be at least 3 parts of the meal. They'll have their little appetizer thing, then their main meal, and sometimes they'll do a salad at the end, which also, salad is not the same in France as it is in America. To me, when I think of salad, I think of lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers and carrots and croutons or bacon bits, but in France, they'll just give you lettuce and maybe some kind of dressing, and it's so good. And I don't need my carrots and tomatoes. I just need my lettuce for my salad.
Obviously, like, you can't pass up the pastries. Like the little boulangerie, they call them, just have these really awesome pastries, and they're not that expensive, so they're a really common kind of stopping point for us missionaries. We get something after a hard day for like 90 cents, and it's like delicious. As far as meals go, there's a lot of salads, but they're like more elaborate than the salads over here. They throw kinds of stuff that I wouldn't necessarily think to put in a salad. There'd be like eggs mixed with like walnuts and like vinegar and like cranberries all in the same salad, and that's not the kind of thing that I would make over here. But I really enjoyed those. lots of gratin, choucroute, those kinds of things that would be cooked in a casserole dish, and rois come out really good as well. A gratin is like it's kind of like a shepherd's pie, but it's got like no. It's not usually made with mashed potatoes. It's like usually a kind of pasta with meat and vegetables, and then there's that layer of grated cheese on top. That's where the gratin comes from. And then they'll cook that to the point where the grated cheese on top will like crisp, and then serve it out in little segments. And it's really good. Choucroute is it's like, if you translate it literally, it's like cabbage crust, and basically it's like cabbage that's like grated really fine, and has a special sauce on it, and then it's cooked in the oven so it's kind of crispy. And it's served. When we had it, it was usually served with sausages, like French saucisson, and that was actually really good. It might not sound very good right now, but it was really, really good. It took me a while to get used to. Breakfast was a bit different. It took me a little while to get used to that. Their breakfasts were more sweet, I guess. They're used to having like, a baguette maybe dunked in chocolate milk, or a pastry, or breakfast cereal, or yogurt. But usually things that'll be like sweeter. And breakfasts that are like savory, like scrambled eggs and like hash browns, that's not the kind of thing that they're used to. So I had to make that mental switch in my mind. French milk tastes a bit different. I didn't like it at first, and then it became normal to me. But yeah, other than that, I only had really good experiences with French food.
I think the big difference between American food and French food generally is that the French like to use a lot of natural food in order to make their food. They use the very basics, and of course they have grocery stores and they have different mixes to make things and stuff, but I think a lot of the time they're much more simple than Americans are when it comes to making their own food. They have McDonald's, they have places that are like McDonald's in France that teenagers go to and everything, but they also have a lot of boulangeries, like bakeries and stuff, that they make sandwiches, and people go there and buy their sandwiches that are like freshly baked, freshly made. That's one thing that I really miss about being back in America, is I don't have a lot of fresh food. The bread was really, really good. I've never had bread that good, and I haven't had bread that good since I've been there. I don't even know how to describe it. And bread being regular bread, pain, and then like pastries, the pâtisseries, and oh goodness, it's so good. I don't even know how to describe it. But when I served in Bordeaux, one family particularly made us mussels, because in Bordeaux they're known for like their seafood, and that's one dish that's really popular. So if you don't like mussels, then train yourself to like mussels. If you're going to the south of France, they're really good. But what else? In Pau, that's in the Basque region, and they have this gâteau basque, and it's I don't know how to describe it. It's just like it's almost like a pie, but in the inside filling is, I think it's almond or something, like nougat, or no, not nougat. It's just like almond paste, and it's in the middle. It's really good, and you're not able to find it in other regions. And so when I left there, I hadn't realized that, so I was just trying to find it everywhere, and I couldn't. So if you're ever in the Basque region, go there, get the Basque cake, and also the pain au chocolat in the Basque region, in Aquitaine, like in Bordeaux and Pau, they call pain au chocolat chocolatines. So if you ask for a pain au chocolat, I asked for that once in Pau, and they didn't know what I was talking about. Or they just acted like they didn't know what I was talking about, and then I was like, chocolatine? And they're like, ah, okay. And they like got me once, so, I've had African food. I had Algerian food, Italian food. So English food, like, yeah, just France has a lot of people from a lot of different regions. So there's a lot of French food, but Portuguese, there's a lot of Portuguese people there, and they eat a lot. They have a lot of meat in all of their meals, but I think that France just has a lot of different international people, and so you'll end up eating a lot of different dishes from different countries, not just French. I think my least favorite dish, I can't think of a French dish I didn't really like, but my least favorite dish was an African dish, or a cow stomach, and cooked spinach with fish oil. I think they might have been from the Congo. They're such nice people. Very, very nice people. And that's what makes me feel bad about saying that I just couldn't handle their food. My trainer actually ended up eating the rest of that for me because I just couldn't.
So the interesting thing about French food is when people try to say, oh, well, what's a typical French dish? A lot of times it actually sounds a lot like typical American dishes, but somehow it's so much better. They do a lot of cooking with vegetables, with chicken, and they do have some of their signature dishes that people know about. They have great pastries, they have great crème brûlée, they have bread that is incredible. I had a French professor once who was talking about how certain things translate and certain things don't. And he said, we tell you that the translation of bread is pain, but I can assure you that bread is not made of the same stuff as pain. And it is so true that the French bread, for whatever reason, is incredible. It's to die for. At the beginning of my mission, I could just buy a baguette and just eat bread plain in a way that I could never do with Wonder Bread. It's just so good. And then, unfortunately, people corrupted me and showed me how good French bread is when you put cheese on it. And then I could not be satisfied with just a baguette. But French food is just incredible. But one of the things that helps you appreciate French food more is approaching it from a very different way than American food. In American food, it seems like there are three tastes. There is spicy, there is salty, and there is sugary. If a food is not strong in one of those three ways, then it's not good. We call it bland. The French appreciate such a wider palette of food. They embrace food that maybe we call bland. They would say, oh, that's very subtle. Or, oh, this is tangy. Or they love all of this variety of taste. They do like salty, they do like sugary, they like spicy, but then they also embrace just such a wide sense of taste, where there's milky, there is again subtle, tangy, spicy, and they recognize it. The French people, when they're raising their children and they're teaching their children how to cook, they say the children learn so much better than Americans. Oh, well, it would be interesting for the food if we just add a little pinch of this spice. And as such, the French know their food a lot better than I do, or most Americans do. But the food is just so wonderful, and to appreciate those subtleties and those different nuances and taste helps you understand food and appreciate it in a way that the French people do.
French food is probably the best food I've ever had in my life, ever. I miss it so much. I would love going over to the members' houses to eat dinner because they knew how to cook really, really well. Freezer food doesn't really exist. Ready to eat food doesn't really exist. In France, they take the time to prepare their own food, and it's a lot more healthy than the food that we eat here. The French are very concerned with what they call bio, which is, I guess for us, that would be organic food. And it's become such a big deal now that organic food is actually somewhat cheaper to buy because everybody buys it now. You know, everybody goes for it. Whereas the organic food here, for example, in America, it's really expensive because, you know, who buys organic food? Nobody really buys organic food here. We should, but not a lot of people do. So they always took the time to prepare their own food, their own dinners, their own everything, and so good. You'd start out typical dinner. You'd start out with probably a salad or something like that, something light, and then the main course would be. It depended really on the family and on the background of the family, but some sort of meat. You know, either chicken or pork or beef with some sort of rice, maybe some potatoes. It depends. There's such a huge variety of food in France and such a huge variety of dishes. That would be followed up by a wonderful dessert of some sort, usually something cold or yogurt, or it was all really healthy. I've never eaten healthier, I think, than when I was in France. In Switzerland, there's a lot more potatoes, I noticed. We ate a lot more tartiflette, is what we called it, tartiflette, which is this potato dish. It's just a bunch of potatoes with some, I guess the equivalent here would be bacon bits, really, lardons, with tartiflette cheese on top. And just put that in the oven for a good hour and then take it back out and you eat that. And it's wonderful. Oh, absolutely wonderful. Other than that, I didn't notice a whole lot of differences really between the French food and the Swiss food. The cheeses were different. There's different cheeses in Switzerland than in France. You get a lot more tome, a lot more mountain cheeses in Switzerland than in France. Then there's the famous Swiss cheese, which tastes nothing like the Swiss cheese we find in America. It's actually entirely different. It's entirely different. The texture is entirely different. When you think Swiss cheese, you think that holy cheese, and it's kind of more solid, you know. But it's not that way, and it doesn't even taste anything alike, really. You have to go to Switzerland and taste the Swiss cheese, the real Swiss cheese. It's fantastic. Confit de canard is my favorite. It's slow-cooked duck with potatoes, and it's the best thing ever, especially in a sandwich. In France, oh yeah, I can't forget this, a lot of kebabs. There'd be a lot of kebaberies, is what they were called. And what that is it's kind of our equivalent of fast food, really. When us missionaries wanted something cheap and quick and easy to eat, we'd go to a kebabery and get us a €5 kebab. And with that, you get fries and a little 32 centiliter drink. I think it's lamb. That's what I've been told, is it's lamb. And it's put in a bun, sort of. It's put in the bun. You get vegetables and some salad, some tomatoes. And then my favorite sauce put in was Algerian sauce. That was the best sauce, in my opinion. That's the more Middle Eastern influence in France. That the kebabs came from that. And I'm glad they did, because I like kebabs. So in Switzerland, you didn't really get as many kebaberies. There's not as much Middle Eastern influence in Switzerland at all. So, but there's a wonderful variety, more of a variety in France really than in Switzerland. In Switzerland, you get a lot of the traditional dishes and cooking. I didn't have the opportunity really to eat too many traditional Swiss dishes, so I couldn't really say anything on that. In France, my favorite drink was Orangina. You find it here in America, but it's not the same. It's an orange drink, fizzy, and it's got pulp in it, and it's wonderful. It's just a really good lemon orange kind of drink. In Switzerland, there was this drink. I can't remember what it was called anymore, but it was a grapefruit flavored drink, and that was my favorite drink in Switzerland. Definitely a lot of wine, which we never got to drink. And the grape juice in France is the best grape juice that I've ever tasted, ever. Here we have Welch's, but it's, in my opinion, it's got kind of a chemical taste to it. But in France, it's wonderful, sublime, my favorite drink. You eat that, you eat cheese, and then take a swig of grape juice after that. And I can see why the French people like wine, we'll put it that way, because it really brings out the flavor of the cheese.
I felt like the food was pretty distinct between France and Belgium, maybe just the food that the missionaries eat. Of course, in Belgium, that's the birthplace of French fries. Frites, that's the birthplace of the waffle, like the real waffle. And in France, the bread is just incredible. If you're lucky enough to serve in Liège, you're going to have that's the place where the original waffle comes. It's called the Liège gaufre, and they heat it up. It's thick waffle. Like, you've never had a waffle this thick. You've never had a waffle this hard. They heat it up. They poke holes in it, and then they put chocolate inside. And so you're eating this waffle, and there's just chocolate inside, and there's little like sugar crystals in there. And you can have chocolate, you can have honey, you can have cinnamon. And I remember maybe having more than one on a day. You know, it's like, we've been contacting for like 2 hours. It's time to get another waffle. It's just so great. There's waffle places in Belgium on every corner. There's frite stands in every corner in France and Belgium. And I think the biggest adjustment, one thing that I wasn't expecting, was the kebab culture in France. The Turkish kebab has just taken over France. People love it. People love it in Belgium. The first time you look inside a kebab restaurant, you're just going to think, no, I don't think I should go in there. No, that doesn't look like I'd be welcome there. But you walk in and they have, I'd never seen one of these before, but it's just a big hunk of meat turning in front of heaters. And I just thought, the first time I saw it, I'm like, I'll have the chicken. Tell her I want chicken. And they have these little shaver things, and you shave off the meat and you kind of heat it up more. And I asked for chicken, and apparently there was some chicken in that meat, because that's what I got in my kebab. In Belgium, they have what's called a mitraillette. In French, that's called a machine gun. And when you see it, it's a machine gun. It's a French baguette, just huge. It's a French baguette with the kebab meat, which I have no idea what kind of meat it is. We don't ask. But it's delicious, and with lots of different vegetables on top. And they have hundreds of different sauces. They have so many different kinds of sauces that you've never tasted before, and you can put that on top. And then on top of all that, they put a ton of frites, a ton of French fries. And you think, the first time I saw one, I thought, I could never eat that. That's huge. Like, there's more fries on that than like a supersized French fry. And they're these thick steak fries. They're so good. And honestly, like, I just remember my first night watching the sister eat one, and I thought, no, I can never eat one of those. They're too big. And it became such like a ritual. You eat one like at least once a week. Like, if not on P-Day, then if you're having a rough day, you go into the kebab shop and grab one. In France, the bread is just incredible. The French people use different flour, and so their bread is lighter. And so you see people with tons of baguettes. They take 5 or 6 long baguettes, and they'll carry them under their arm, and they'll get that every single day. They'll buy it fresh. In France, there's a bakery on each corner. There's patisseries on each corner, and it's so delicious. All the bread, all the pastries, and it's so delicious. So many different kinds that you've never had before. So many different tastes, and such a different texture, and such a different kind of consistency than American pastries.
In Belgium, so the food is pretty much the same, but the way they eat is they eat more meat, at least from what I noticed. So in France, they eat like super healthy, like they have a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, and then a little bit of meat. But then in Belgium, they're kind of more American with the kind of stuff they eat, like sausages, like beef. There's this thing up in Belgium called a mitraillette, means machine gun in French, and it's basically a baguette sandwich, and then it's just packed with meat, and then they put fries in it, and then they put sauce, and it's huge. It's like this big, and so I mean that kind of gives you an idea of like kind of stuff to eat. I remember so I served in a city called Namur in Belgium, and the bishop just loved barbecue and sausages, and so like he'd often invite us over there just to go eat sausage, because I guess it makes sense, it's close to Germany. So a kebab is sent from heaven. It's like a little sandwich. It's kind of like I think they call them heroes. It's like Greek, but they basically have like this machine. It's like on a pole, and they have meat on it, and it like turns, and then it's like a heater thing that keeps it warm. They shave off the meat, and they put it in this sandwich. They have those like tomatoes, lettuce, onions, And the meat, you got to get chicken. That's the best one, in my opinion. You can get beef, but I don't know what's in it. But the chicken one is safe, as far as I know. And yeah, it's just basically like a hero, I guess. But I think it's more greasier. And then you have fries on the side. Super good as well. A mitraillette is basically a kebab with fries in it and bigger. Cheese. Oh, I love the cheese. I remember at first my trainer, so he was finishing his mission when he trained me. So he already had like a good love for the cheese and he understood like how to eat it. And I remember when I'd watch him eat it, he'd have a piece of bread like this big and then like a piece of cheese like almost the same size, like and fat too on top. So there's more cheese than bread and he would just eat it. But me, I had to have like this much cheese and like that much bread because I just didn't have the taste for it yet. But like now I could just cut off the cheese and just eat it like that. Like I don't know what makes it so good, but it's like an acquired taste, I guess. But there's like, so for when you go, you know, in the future, start off with like Président or like a Brie type of cheese. Those are really like easy cheeses. They're not stinky or anything like that. And then you move your way up and then you'll like it.
So the French people, when they make a meal, they can sit down at the table for 3 to 4 hours without thinking twice about it. For them, they're very slow eaters. They like to talk when they eat. It's basically the social aspect of their life is around the dinner table. And so their average course meal is about a 4-course meal, something like that, 3 to 4 courses. You start out with a salad, and then you go to some kind of other appetizer, or sorry, reverse that. So you have some kind of crackers or appetizer before, then you have the salad, then you have the main meal, then you have dessert. Actually, sorry, you have the cheese and then the dessert. That's how it usually works. And cheese is a huge part of their culture as well. They have over 350 different kinds of cheeses in France alone. Where Belgium, on the other hand, they are known for their fries. Their frites is the best thing ever, by the way, and it's really, I guess you could say it's cool to see the difference. Just because like Belgium, they have certain holidays. Like there was this one holiday when I went on exchange up in Liège. They had a holiday where they just had free beer for anybody, and so everybody was drunk in the streets, and it's kind of crazy. But it's just it's a mix between. I almost feel like it's a mix between German and French culture, just kind of button heads all the time, where you have a lot of. I don't want to say like. I don't want to say like dirty foods, like greasy kind of foods. Yeah, like street foods, I guess you could say. In Belgium and in France, you have a lot. It's a lot more. I guess you could say it's a lot more proper in a sense. It's kind of weird to say it that way, but that's kind of the only way I'm going to be able to describe it like that.
Paris is what's called the melting pot of the world, and there's so many different cultures there, ethnicities, nationalities. There's so many different types of people there, so we were able to eat a lot of different types of food. I think my favorite is still going to be the French food, always, because there's so many different courses. But they always say, okay, we're going to have the appetizer, and then the main meal, and then dessert, which is their first dessert is bread and cheese, which is my favorite. Lots of different kinds of cheese that stink, that look disgusting, but are super good. And then at the end they have dessert with which could be some kind of brownie or cake, or they like to have fruit sometimes at the end. And I'd say that's a typical French meal. And then you also have people in Paris who are from Africa, and you have pretty awesome food there. But that usually consists of weird looking fish or some type of grain and like these milk drinks. I don't know, there's several different types that I had. Or depending on where you go in the area, there's what's called choucroute, which is lots of different sausages and then the different types of vegetables and potatoes that they put together. That's really yummy. And another fun meal we had for Christmas, it's called the Dinner of Children, the Repas des Enfants. And they make these little like gingerbread men out of bread, and you dip them in hot chocolate and you eat clementines. And it's just basically a sugar meal, but that's what all the kids eat in the east part. The region, the Alsatian region, they eat the children's dinner for Christmas. So those are some of the meals there.
Pastries in France are so good. They're so good. My favorite is called the choco-pistache. It's got like pistachio filling inside a pastry. But everybody loves the pain au chocolat, which is basically like a croissant type thing with chocolate in it. Or they've got like cream puffs and pudding-filled cream puffs and all sorts of just great pastries. And we used to make crepes all the time, because crepes are so great because you can have salty or sweet. It's the same crepe batter, but you can put cheese on it. You can do like a ham cheese spinach, or you can do like Nutella, or there's this really great spread called speculoos. It's just like sweet, like a dessert. So we had crepes all the time. I love crepes. Meal times are really important for French people. It was kind of hard sometimes to only stay for an hour at members' houses, which is something that our mission president kind of asked us, try not to stay so long at members' houses. But meal times are so important to them, because they just get around the table and it's family time and they talk, and people, that's where you can like share opinions and argue, in a nice way, and just really like get to know the people in your family. So that's why I felt like food was really important, for that reason, that it's family time. It's time to get together. So
they always eat baguettes with every meal, pretty much. And that's pretty much the best bread you can eat. So they have a lot of different types and stuff. But in my mission, a lot of the French people, they love lasagna. So they'll have that a lot of the time. They have a meal called tartiflette. It's like a casserole dish where you put potatoes, cheese, milk, bacon. You kind of cook it. And the milk, it doesn't like evaporate out, but it kind of thickens or whatever in it. And so you eat that. And that was a big dish where I was at. They would have endive salads all the time. Mustard dressings are popular. So that's not something you see in the US, but they'll mix mustard with vinaigrette and things like that. One of my wards had a member who was German, or he had German roots. And so he would make us, sausages and sauerkraut, and we had, crepes, of course. People say crepe, but it's a crepe. So that's just a little pronunciation thing going on there. And they'll have savory and sweet crepes. Usually they'll put Nutella on them. If it's just quick, you can do powdered sugar with butter. You can do lemon juice and powdered sugar and butter. The savory crepes are my favorite. You can do it. They'll usually put an egg, actually, with theirs. That's not something we think of. We'd think of that as an omelet, but they'll just crack it on the crepe as it's cooking. And so it's not like you cook it separate or whatever. So it'll be kind of runny, almost like a raw egg. You can do with ham, and there's a cheese called Emmental. It's kind of like Swiss cheese, but they use Emmental with their crepes a lot. You can do with eggplant, spinach, feta, tomatoes. And so all these things mixed in with this is really nice. They have, often with their savory crepes, they'll have there's a flour, sarrasin flour. It's like a brown flour that's kind of hard to find here in the US. And that gives it a different texture and a different flavor that's really, really good. Let's see. As a missionary, because we didn't have as much money, we had a decent amount per transfer, but I wasn't a big spender. We would just buy baguettes every day coming home from wherever we were at, because they have bakeries every corner. We'd buy some cheese, we'd buy fresh fruits and vegetables, pasta, rice, frozen meats, and frozen vegetables. And so that way we could have for dinner pasta and veggies. Breakfast we would have, there's a thing called pain au chocolat, which is like it's like a croissant with a bittersweet chocolate cream, chocolate paste, more like, in the inside. And it's one of the best things. We'd have like one of those every day. And you'd have hot chocolate, of course. You know, you dip your baguette in that and you could eat it. But for lunch, my favorite was just having baguette with cheese. You know, they have hundreds and hundreds of cheeses. They say that France, the problem with France is that they have one religion and 300 cheeses, and America has 300 religions and one cheese. And so that is reflective of the culture, you know. They really do have so many different cheeses, and every region has their specialty, and a lot of them do taste kind of similar, but the method of preparation is different. Some people like leaving their cheeses to get old so they're smelly, and I love it. I love all of them. They're all so different and delicious, and they don't always taste like they smell, so that's something to remember, because a lot of people, they smell French cheese and they think, oh, it's yucky. It's not all as smelly as you think, and it can be, but it usually tastes pretty good. So I've had boar soup. I had horse, frog legs, escargot. They'll have these things, but not too often. It's not like I didn't have the impression that it was as much of a delicacy as you think of. They would have caviar as a delicacy. That is something that it really is kind of hard to come by, unless you buy the low quality caviar. Usually you'll put that on some bread with butter, and you'll eat that. So in case you ever get caviar. And it was, it's kind of salty. It just tastes like seafood. It wasn't that great. But again, I didn't ever have the fancy, expensive caviar. The other thing that's famous in France is pâté, so foie gras. That is a huge specialty of France, and a lot of the time it's illegal here in the U.S. I don't think you can bring it back to the U.S. I know that a few places here, they make a pâté, but it's not usually the same type. So what they do is they force feed ducks or geese, and then when they die, they'll take the liver that has been, engorged and fattened up, and they kind of grind it up with other meats or other things, fat, and they prepare it with some other spices or flavorings, and they put it in a jar, kind of like a preservative, or like a is that what it? Preservatives? Kind of like canned foods. So you can keep it and it'll stay good forever, and they'll open it up, and it's especially famous during Christmas time. And that was one of my favorite things. You'd eat that and you just put it on bread, and it was really yummy. A lot of people don't like the idea of eating duck liver or whatever, but it was really good. And they have really expensive and really cheap versions of it. You can also get foreign foods. When I was on my mission, we would look for Reese's Cups, and you could find that. You could find Dr. Pepper in stores. You could find Vegemite, which is, British or Australian, typically. A lot of Asian foods you could find there as well in the supermarkets. And so they have a lot of different things. The problem for me was coming back from my mission, I didn't know what to eat or how to grocery shop, because I was so used to just buying fresh vegetables and fruits, buying bread and cheese, and just eating, not having to cook very often. We would cook sometimes, but not too often. I just didn't know what to do when I came home, so that was kind of interesting. I think the last thing that's really big in France are actually French fries and beef patties. Normal people will eat them all the time, so you buy them in packs of 4 patties, and they'll just cook them and eat them. They won't put them on buns necessarily or anything like that. They'll just season their beef patty. And French fries everywhere. A lot of French people, they'll buy a 5-pound bag of frozen potato chip, like potato fry things, And then they'll throw them in a deep fryer and make fries and eat them. So that, I guess it's ironic that they're called French fries because they don't call them French fries, but we do, and they eat them a lot. So
Raclette, number one. My all-time favorite meal. Like when members would be like, what do you want to eat? Do you guys got raclette? Or can you make raclette? So it's kind of a seasonal dish. It's so funny because when you explain it, it doesn't sound very good, but when you eat it, it's incroyable. Basically, it's like a machine, kind of like a grill. There's like one layer, and then there's another like pan on top. So how this works is they have these little mini pans, and you put it in the bottom part, like that first layer, and you put cheese in it, and it melts the cheese. And then on top, you can put like meat or vegetables, like ham or bacon or whatever. And then on the side, they have baked or like boiled potatoes. And so what you do is you take the potato on your plate, cut it up, and then however you want to put it on, it's fine. But basically, you just mix the vegetables, the meat, and the cheese all in it. And it is so good. Like, I think that's the reason that in the beginning I gained a little bit of weight on my mission. And it's like seasonal too, so it's only usually during winter. But they can make it in the summer, but they prefer not, I guess. They're pretty strict with how they eat. Another super good dish, yeah, tartiflette. That's way good. It's basically like in a quiche pan, and that's just got like sour cream, and then potatoes and bacon, and then there's this special cheese called tartiflette cheese they put across the top. That's also a winter meal, right? Yeah. That's super good as well. Just potatoes and cheese, like that's my favorite part. But yeah, it's a hot dish, and yeah, that's another one that I really like.